All right, well, welcome everyone. It's good to see you. And this is my first time teaching a Zoom class, so we'll see how this all works. Um, I'm going to try to make it somewhat interactive as well as instructive. And so I'm going to begin just by allowing us to introduce ourselves to each other. We had Alyssa's image on there a moment ago, and we have owner, who else? But we'll just kind of go around and just come extending a welcome. What I wanted to ask you in introducing yourself, just say your name and what you're intending to do for a Seder this year. And what I hope to help you do is make it easier, maybe more meaningful, and certainly give you a little bit of extra content for it. So I'll start. I will be leading for the first time a Seder with our family, much the way that we're doing this right now. So we've got certainly me and Becky and Simon and Aiden here at the house, but Lily and Elliot are in different places. My brother, you know, I never share with him, and my mom is in California. So we're going to try to do an interactive Zoom-like experience for our Seder. And some of the things I'll be kind of sharing with you today will be very adaptable for a multi-screen Seder experience. Justin, what are you doing for your Seder?
I'm actually going, I'm going back to Fort Worth. That's where my family lives. So I'll be going there. But you know, somewhere down the road, I'm sure I'm going to have to lead a Seder. So still valuable information for me to lead one in the future.
Great. So I'll have you introduce yourselves. Dolph, introduce yourself and what you have.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dolph Simon, and this year we're having a much smaller group at our Seder. Usually we have like 25 people, and this year I think we're just going to have 4, maybe 5. And so it's going to be different for us in that respect, because in the past when I've led the Seder, it's been a very collaborative among 25 people. So that's going to be the primary difference.
There are dogs that are barely bigger than teachers.
Hey, Mike, will you mute?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I was just testing. Hey, everybody.
Hello,
Hey,
Mike.
it's good to see you. Susanna, how are you, first of all, and introduce yourself. And
I'm Susanna Fialowski, and this year it will be like yours. It will be a Seder that will not be in the screen because I'm by myself and can leave the house for the time being. So I will have 2 of my other families, one in Houston, one in California, and we're going to do through Zoom our Seder.
nice.
So it is going to be like for yourself too, a new experience, but this has been a great learning curve, and I think that we all will benefit in the very end. I appreciate your doing this. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, it's great to know. Alyssa, how about you?
I will be at home with my new husband, and I will be leading a 2-person Seder in person with us. We may do a Zoom Seder, so just wanted to get some basic information since this will be my first time leading.
Great. Charles?
Yes, Chuck Weiner, my wife Mary and I will be having our Seder by ourselves. We're thinking of maybe going to Kenny and Ziggy's to pick up some goodies before and use that.
Yes, actually, and so Kenny and Ziggy's would be taking its orders. I think, Justin, is there a deadline like this?
Yeah, today's the deadline for Kenny and Ziggy's, actually. So
Right.
So just make sure, yeah, you know, they won't be kind of as a restaurant. They're going to kind of prepare and have you pick up and drop off.
Exactly.
Could you introduce yourself and tell us what kind of Seder you're going to be hosting or having? Oh, can't. I think it's on mute. That's. Well, we're having technical. One of the Zoom things that you'll want to test out is the technical issues, you know, so if you're doing something that's going to be long distance, test it out, because we're not getting any sound over here. I'm not sure what's going on, and see what might work best. Let me just share with you that we have resources for you on the HCRJ website. These will include different Haggadahs that we've used at HCRJ, as well as PDFs and connections to other kinds of Haggadahs. Some are kind of virtual Haggadahs, and some are actually ones that you can print up. But we're trying to make a center for you to go and find those resources in one place. Additionally, there are a number of congregations here in town that are doing either pre-recorded Seders. Congregation Beth Israel is doing one like that, or a number of Seders led by one of the rabbis in town that will be more of a Zoom experience. So if you feel like you want to kind of get kind of a community Seder, that's another option too, and we'll have those links on our website in our Seder resource section. So say that 3 times fast, but that's available to everybody here. So I wanted to take the time to teach you how to do your own. If you wanted to just be a couple of folks, or Susanna, you're going to be on a Zoom Seder, but you can have those resources to share with family and friends who are connected to yours. Here are some things that I think might be of use. Welcome, Lauren. It's good to have you. Welcome, David. We're just getting rolling now. So at a first glance, the concept of a Seder, I am certain, is overwhelming. You know, just set aside, we even get to the text, just what the heck to shop for, where to find it these days is really, really challenging. In fact, in our household, we did our own Seder prep of kind of making a section of our cupboards, kind of the stuff that we will allow ourselves to eat for Passover, you know, the non-bread items, but we've not been as strict as we usually are in the past. And we are purchasing just, like, if you can't find parsley, eat something else that's green, you know? So we're gonna go through all of these kinds of things, but the most important thing is to be prepared. He's a Boy Scout. Just be prepared with all of the items, but you don't have to this year be as strict, because those items may be a little harder to find. So we're going to look at some of those options as we go through the Seder plate as well as the Seder order. The second thing is once you're prepared, you know what you're going to cook, you know what's in your refrigerator, you know what you're going to use for your symbolic foods. You got the Haggadah itself. And this is what I want to demystify as well today. So we're going to look at the items, and we're going to look to demystify the actual Seder Haggadah experience. What I encourage you to do is, if you have a question that you want to ask, just, I think there's a way to do that actually with the technology, but if you just want to do one of these, I'll pause and let you ask a question as well. So the word Seder literally means order. So there's an order to the meal itself. Every Haggadah has that order laid out. But I'm going to suggest to you this year, and maybe always, you just really need to know 4 basic rubrics, units of the Seder itself, which is divided up by the 4 cups of wine. if you can just remember those 4 cups of wine and what they're delineating, you can honestly, you can freeform it, right? You can just shoot from the hip, because most of us know the basic information that is around those 4 cups. So what are those 4 basic units in general? And then we're going to go into specifics. Those 4 basic units are sanctifying the day, just like you would sanctify the Sabbath with the Kiddush. All of our holidays, all of our festivals begin with the Kiddush. The sanctification, that would be the first cup of wine. Included in that unit are things like the lighting of the candles, right? So before you even begin any holiday, before you begin Shabbat, you light your candles, and then you sanctify the day with the Kiddush. So that covers cup number 1. The second is structured around the retelling of the story. That's the bulk of the Seder. It includes all of our symbolic foods. It includes the 4 questions and the retelling of the story in whatever way we'll kind of discuss, right? So sanctify the night, tell the story, then you eat your meal, and at the end of your meal, after the afikomen, and we'll go over this in more detail later, but after you eat the meal, there's the 3rd cup. And the final cup of wine is structured around just thanking God for this day, thanking God for the meal, thanking God for our redemption long ago with the hope that God will redeem us again. Those are the basic 4 cups: sanctification, magid, which is the retelling, expressing our gratitude for the meal, and then thanking God for the redemption of our past, from slavery to freedom. That's the basic structure of the Seder. You can do that freeform in 10 minutes, which some people do. Or, as we will enjoy now, a journey through those 4 cups with a little more detail. Before I continue, are there any questions? I tried to really simplify it, almost like the table of contents for our day. Any questions for the general idea?
No.
All right, then let's begin with a little more in-depth idea about these 4 cups. I'm going to reach over and get my Tanakh, oops, I dropped my pen. My Tanakh, the Jewish Bible, because the entire Seder is structured on ideas that are found in the story of the Exodus of our people. And the 4 cups is the first piece of that. These 4 cups are based on 4 specific promises that God makes to the Jewish people in Exodus 6, verses 6 and 7. Just 4 promises lead to 4 cups of wine, leads to the 4-part structure of our Seder. And this is what God says. God says, I have now heard the moaning of the Israelites because the Egyptians are holding them bondage, and I have remembered the covenant. Say therefore to the Israelite people, here come the 4 promises. I am the Lord your God. I will free you from the labors of the Egyptians. And 2, I will deliver you from their bondage. Number 3, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. Get my numbers invisible. So I will redeem you, and I will take you to be my people. Those are the 4 promises. I will, let me remind you, I will, 1, free you from the labors of the Egyptians, deliver you from bondage, redeem you with an outstretched arm, and take you to be my people. And based on those 4 promises, we have the 4 cups of wine and the 4-part structure of our Seder. There is a 5th promise, however, which is really, in my mind, the punchline of the Seder itself. And that is that God says that God will return us to the land. Now you have to remember that the rabbis who were writing the Seder in the first century were living in exile. So this promise, the fifth promise, I will return you to the land, had not yet been accomplished. It had not yet been realized. And so that fifth cup of wine, the big one that does not get consumed, Elijah's cup, is the fifth cup that we will discuss, and I'll discuss that at the very end. But in my mind, it's Elijah's cup that represents the punchline of the Seder itself. But let's go through the Seder according to the four promises that were indeed realized by the Israelites and the Jewish people through history. Any questions about the structure of those four cups before we actually look at these? Fantastic. Cup number one, as I said, this is just a review, is the sanctification of the day. The beginning of the Seder, when you sit down, family, with your Seder plate and you've got cups of wine, you will fill your cup. And by the way, the rabbis said in the Talmud, unless I guess they weren't thinking about, issues of alcoholics or an issue if you couldn't drink wine, but you're supposed to actually have 4 cups of wine, which makes that last part of the Seder always a lot of fun. So you sit down, you have your first cup of wine. After you light your candles, you sanctify the day with the Kiddush, okay? That's part number one. That accomplished your first promise that God made to the Israelites. The second cup comes at the end of the longest portion of the Seder itself, and that is the retelling of the story of our Exodus.
Everything in the house.
This is really what we're trying to do, is take ourselves from the story of our bondage,
He's the oldest.
our redemption. And so we kind of serve 2 purposes at this point. The first is we are those slaves that were liberated, and we celebrate our freedom. So in terms of being the slaves, we serve each other in our household. We all pour each other wine. You don't pour your own. You're a slave to those around us. We kind of remind ourselves that we were slaves in Egypt. So we pour each other the wine, and we were freed. So we receive that. We get to, throughout the Seder, enjoy both aspects, serving others and experiencing being served like royalty.
Mitch, can you see?
I don't know.
Was there a question?
On the screen there?
Well, if folks, you don't have a question, it's best maybe if you
Don't put me on.
screen, because we will minimize the echoes that might take place in things. So I have here, see if I can see it, a Seder plate, right? And this is what we use, of course, to retell our story. We have our ritual items that we use to help tell our story. So in
People there with
part
you.
of the Seder, cup number 2,
On the computer.
begin by identifying all of the ritual items.
Something.
Warren, can you mute your screen so we can, we're getting,
Saying other people.
Let me see.
all right. So let's talk about each of the items. Here I'm going to make this interactive. So if you have the answer to this, please raise your hand and share. Here we go. Item number 1, charoset. Who knows why we eat charoset? All right, take yourself off mute there, Laura, and tell us why we eat charoset.
to remind us of the bricks
All right.
that they used when we were slaves.
Excellent. So as I'm doing this, by the way, I'm trying to model for you how simple this is. You can just go around your Seder table or around your Zoom table, whatever it may be, and identify the different items, right? All right, here's another easy one. How about this? The bitter herbs. Why do we eat bitter herbs? Let's see if we have another person that might want to share. All right. Well,
Hey, guys, go get your
reminds us of the bitterness of slavery.
shoes on.
Right? Now, it might be a little hard for you to find horseradish right now. I don't know. I don't know its availability. I haven't been in the grocery store for 3 weeks. We're getting stuff delivered every day. But, you know, you ask the Instacart guy to get you horseradish, and who knows what you're going to get. So if you don't actually find horseradish, the rabbis in the Talmud didn't have horseradish. That's a new bitter herb. So you'll see sometimes on your Seder tables, I've got my Seder cups here. Sometimes you'll see horseradish. This is the horseradish one. But sometimes you'll see lettuce. Like, why do they have lettuce on the Seder plate? Well, lettuce was one of the bitter herbs. They used romaine lettuce, which isn't really that bitter. So here's a picture of the bitter herbs according to the rabbis, and it's a picture of lettuce. But the other picture I just showed you was of horseradish. So I would suggest whatever you can find in your refrigerator that might be bitter, that could be your bitter herbs this year. Maybe a jalapeno. Make it a southwestern one, right? Or maybe it could be romaine lettuce. But if you can find horseradish, sei gesund. Right. Then we have on the Seder table.
They have trouble finding it, yeah.
There we go. That shouldn't be hard to find, eggs. Now, why the roasted egg? Egg is the symbol of springtime, but why roasted? So as you're going around your Seder plate, and you can share this little detail with folks, it needed to be 2 roasted items according to the rabbis on the Seder plate.
Yeah.
Roasting was really a symbol of the sacrifice. And one of the roasted items was the shank bone, which was to delineate our houses as being Jewish. We'll look at that one in a moment. But that was also the roasted lamb that was sacrificed at the temple in ancient times. The egg is the second roasted item. And it also is a symbol of springtime.
Putting their pictures on.
Here's our next Seder item. Salt water. So you're going to have salt water on your table, of course. Salt water. Who would like to try that one? Is that making this interactive? Why do we have salt water at our Seders?
Tears.
All right, Dolph, take yourself off mute. Let us know.
That would be the tears of slavery.
The tears and sweat of slavery.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, we'll go over the custom in a moment, but to dip the greens of springtime to the sweat and tears of our ancestors. So I answered this next one. We're supposed to have some kind of green. Parsley could be great.
Parsley.
If you're at Instacart and they're not bringing you parsley, you have something green in your refrigerator will work fine. You could use celery. You could use celery.
I just said that's what he said.
Something that I think is kind of fun in the Sephardic tradition. I believe that this is a custom done in Turkey, but they dip green onion into the salt water and they hit each other as if they're being whipped by the Dayenu. So that's kind of fun too. All right.
Hit each other with it.
This one is an easy one, matzah.
Not the shmura matzah.
Yes, matzah. Yeah, the shmur matzah is really great. So again, hopefully you'll be able to find some matzah, but if you don't, you can watch the Wolfsons make matzah later this week. I think it's going to be the advertisement, but we will be demonstrating how to make your own matzah. In fact, up until Manischewitz made it a commodity that was bought in the grocery store for, believe it or not, hygienic purposes. Everybody made their own matzah until about the 1920s. So not bad to make your own matzah if you have to. It's worse tasting than the Manischewitz, but unless you get it down. All right. The shank bone. There we go. The shank bone, as I just mentioned, is to symbolize the Paschal lamb that was offered at the temple in ancient times as the sacrifice, as well as being
Bill just lives on the phone.
that needs to be on the
Got a
Seder.
Waxler.
So to review, we don't have to go through all of the details. The first cup was for sanctification. The second cup is to celebrate our story. So the first thing you'll want to do is go around your Seder table and identify each of these items. Hopefully, these simple explanations,
He just told me to put my phone
your
on
elementary
mute.
school days or your Hebrew school days, but if they don't, they're readily available to you on our resource pages if you get a Haggadah, or you can just Google them ahead of time. Again, be prepared. So the first round is purely identifying what the items are. And then we start the slow process of building up to telling the story itself. This takes place in 2 or 3 forms. Number 1, recognizing that this night is different. And so traditionally we have something called the 4 questions, which is really 1 question with 4 answers. The 1 question is, we can all say it together, Mani halayla hazeh mikol halaylot. Why is this night different from all other nights of the year? And the 4 reasons is, on this night we eat matzah rather than other kinds of bread. On this night we eat bitter herbs in particular, in addition to other herbs, but we must eat bitter herbs to remind us of the bitterness of slavery. The third is to remind that on all other nights of the year we eat, we don't even dip our vegetables once. Or maybe you dip a potato chip in some onion dip, but that doesn't count. But on this night, we dip twice. What are the 2 dippings? The first dipping is the parsley into the salt water, which we discussed, the springtime into the sweat and saltiness of our slavery. And the second is the hilla, we dip the bitterness of slavery with the bitter herb into the sweetness of the charoset, right? When we eat the Hillel sandwich at the end. So, and then finally, we're supposed to relax and recline. Now, whether or not you actually do all of the 4 questions in its original Aramaic, which is a sister language of Hebrew, or you simply pause and ask, how is this night going to be different? You're doing the same thing, because what we're doing is we're setting up the storytelling with the question. That's all that really needs to happen. So identify what the ritual foods are and ask, how is this night different? And now we're going to indulge ourselves in the process. There's a blessing, and if you use an actual Haggadah, it will take you through this order specifically. The dipping of the greens in the salt water, and then the next thing you eat, and the next thing you eat. But again, if I'm trying to oversimplify, it's really to make this a very unthreatening thing. All that really needs to take place is say, how is this night different? and then go through the process of each of these ritual foods, of eating them and then answering them. Now, if we want to take it a step deeper, there are 4 sons. 4 questions, 4 sons. This Seder brought to you by the number 4. These 4 sons are really to help us remember that there are different kinds of learners. Some of us like to learn more intellectually, so you might prepare in the next days ahead some really deep ideas. Maybe your Seder is going to be all adults, so you can tell everybody to bring an important idea with regards to one of the customs or whatever it may be. But some of us want to remember things at a higher level. But then there are learners that are really, really young, that don't even know how to ask the questions at all. And this is the balance. If you have little kids and you have older ones, you have to find a balance in terms of timing and intellectual stimulation that makes it all come alive. I highly recommend, if you have young ones, to keep it short and as engaged and interactive as possible. Then there's the people in the middle. So they say that there's the wise son, the intellectual, who says, I get this, and I'm going to add to this story because I myself was part of this story. The wicked son is the one who says, this doesn't concern me. Sound familiar? We've got a plague coming right now. People are still out there saying, this doesn't concern me. I'm healthy. I'm okay. So to those, we need to remind ourselves that we need to include ourselves in the story. And then there is the simple son who knows enough to learn, but doesn't quite get it all. That probably would be our toddlers or our elementary school kids. And finally, those who are just barely can speak. So you got to get through the Seder quickly. So again, I know I keep repeating myself, but as we journey through this second longer cup, the second cup really is about the telling. We tell what the Seder plate's about. We ask the question, how is this night different? And then we monitor our story, our experience based on who's at the Seder table. It can be the highest intellectual level, or it can be short and sweet. Doesn't matter, because all that needs to happen now is for us to somehow tell the story. And now I'm going to invite you to kind of think about your Seder table itself, who's going to be there, and tell the story however you'd like. You can, at our table, I'm hoping to ask my mom and my brother who are going to eat in California, our cousins who are going to be in Meyerland, my family that'll be here, my daughter that's going to be in Denver. We're each going to take a chunk of the story and we're going to tell it. So it starts with, who was the first Jew? Abraham. Well, how did he get to where we went from Abraham going forth to being slaves in Egypt? And how did Moses find the message that he needs to take the 10 plagues to the Israelites? To the Egyptians, so that Pharaoh, all of these things are part of the story. You can do it in a formal way by reading it. You can do it in an interactive way by just inviting people to tell the story on their own. But that is the context of this second cup. We build up to the telling of the story, and I encourage you to do it in any way you can or you want. Each of the Seder Haggadahs that we have as resources on our HCRJ website provide you with a simple way to retell the story. You could watch a movie together after dinner. You know, watch The Prince of Egypt, which was a great animated version. Watch the old version of with the Charlton Heston of the 10 Commandments. Great ways to retell the story, but that's what the purpose of this second part is. And so then, before we eat our meal together, where's my Kiddush cup? Second cup of wine, and we toast l'chaim. So first cup, sanctification. Second cup, all about the retelling of the story. You eat your meal, and any questions to this point? I've been kind of talking a bunch. Haven't really given any options to allow you to ask some questions. Does anybody have any questions to this point?
Is my internet connection unstable?
Nope.
I hear a voice, but I don't, no,
Yeah.
all right. So in the context, by the way, of the retelling of the story, I left out a really important thing that I think is extremely valuable and important for us at this Seder in particular. Woven into the context of the telling of the story are the plagues that come upon the Egyptians. And this year, I think that however you might tell the story, you pause and you allow this part of the storytelling to be of great significance. As you recall from the Seders you may have celebrated in the past, with the recitation of each of the plagues, you're supposed to remove one drop of wine from your cup and place it on the Seder plate. Best not to use your finger because it's a temptation, you know, to touch your face or to lick your fingers after you say these plagues, but we don't want the plagues to be part of ourselves. So it's better to remove the wine with your spoon or a fork or the back of your knife, whatever it may be. But this year, after the 10th plague, I think it's really important to pause and to think about what's going on in the world today. This is really a challenging time, as we know, and I think taking it to a spiritual, religious place, whether it's helping our children understand it in their own way, or sharing a moment of silence in an adult way, or reflecting on the changes that come from a result of this is really a very, very powerful thing. So after the second cup is complete, we enjoy our meal. And a lot of times people don't even get to the second half of the Seder. They don't even open their Haggadahs again. But there's really not that much on the back end. So as long as after you're finished eating, you enjoy one more cup of wine, which is the cup of blessing and saying, you know, thank you, God, for our family, whatever you want to be grateful for, and expressing that gratitude after the meal, that would be great. If you have kids, the Afikomen search comes right after the meal, and you can't actually say this third cup until you've found the Afikomen. It's just a little game that the rabbis came up with to keep the kids awake. But if you're just adults, or you're going to find yourself on a Zoom Seder, you don't even need to worry so much about the Afikomen, but you should be grateful for the meal that we share, for the blessings that we have, and for our health. And the final part of our Seder comes between this expressions of gratitude and the closing cup. And in that block of time comes what I was telling you earlier about the fifth cup, Elijah's cup. Because Elijah's cup sits in the middle of the table, usually full of wine, and nobody drinks it. We open the door for Elijah with the hope that Elijah will join us. But here's what's so interesting about Elijah's cup. As I mentioned in the beginning, the fifth promise in the story of the Exodus was that God would bring us back to the land of Israel. God would bring us to the land. the rabbis writing in the time when they were living in exile believed that they would never get back to the land of Israel until God brought them back. So here is the beautiful punchline of Elijah's cup. It sits there unconsumed throughout our Seder. We open the door, and the hope is that Elijah comes to sip from the cup. Why? Because Elijah is the prophet who heralds the coming of the day when God will bring everything whole again. The messianic age, the age when the Messiah will come and peace on earth will reign. And in that biblical mindset is when God will bring the Israelites back to the land. We end our Seder, I'm jumping ahead, but we end our Seder saying next year in Jerusalem, right? We all say that at the end. We always think we're wishing that we'll be in Jerusalem next year, but the rabbis were wishing something different. When they said next year in Jerusalem, they meant, please God, bring us back. Please God, bring Elijah, your prophet, to tell us that we will be in Jerusalem next year in a time of total peace and harmony in the world. And so therefore, Elijah's cup is the punchline of the Seder. If Elijah actually drinks from the cup, we're in great shape. But what happens if the cup, which usually is completely full by the end of our Seder, remains full? It means we've got a lot of work to do. We are partners with God in taking care of this world. We are partners with God through what we do to lay the foundation of that perfect age. We are partners with God in the collective redemption of all people. And the punchline is repeated again and again. Until all are free, none are free. And so it's this partnership of our reminding ourselves of this mission through the telling of the story, through the eating of these ritual foods, to remind ourselves that we are responsible for bringing about the day when God will bring the Messiah, and through Elijah tell us that we are going to have a perfect age to come. And we say, Bimheira b'yameinu, soon and in our day. So before we drink that final cup, Elijah's promise is what we try to remember. We open the door, we invite Elijah in, we sing Eliyahu Hanavi. If you remember those words, great. You can, Justin, I guess I should probably add that to our song list. You can play the song Eliyahu Hanavi if you don't know it. But what's most important is that you take the time to remember that the perfect age is not yet, and it's our collective responsibility to help bring it about. Until all are free, none are free. And then it is customary, after singing the door to Elijah, to sing some songs that just collectively make us feel the joy of each other's company. And then cup number 4, we thank God for the day. And one last Borei Pri Hagafen, L'chaim, we drink it, we say, next year in Jerusalem, we close our Haggadahs and go on with our evening. So that process from cup number 1 to cup number 4 can take hours, which it does in more traditional communities, or it can be very, very brief. The most important thing is for us to collectively remember that it is our responsibility to bring about a better world. And we do this by remembering our story, that God once took us from slavery to freedom. Let us now try to take the world from a bad place to a good place. And I see we've got some questions on this chat. Oh, wait, that didn't work. What happened here? I thought let's see. I had chat messages, but it didn't, have everyone, all right. That didn't work for me. But Justin had said that make sure that everybody knows once again that we have the website, which is hcrj.org. And on the website, we have resources for you, which include community seders that are being done via Zoom, some pre-recorded seders, our Haggadahs, a number of other Haggadahs, and then additional resources that might help you lead your own Seder. Are there any questions that I didn't cover? There's so much to cover in a Seder, and to do it in a short amount of time is
Excellent. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you all so much.
Hi, Joni.
Hi. Bye-bye.
And thank you, Rabbi. Great, we enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
If you have questions that I didn't get to answer, you can send me an email at rabbigross@hcrj.org, and I can address those questions in very specifically. So great. I wish you all a wonderful week, a wonderful Shabbat ahead, and an easy preparation for your Seder, and ultimately a great Seder, no matter how large or small. I look forward to hearing about them in the future.
Thank you for hosting, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
All right, Norm? Yeah.